For the fifth Sunday of Lent, the church gives us this iconic story of Jesus' mercy towards the woman caught in adultery. Remember, the scribes and the Pharisees bring her to Jesus, trying to trap him and as well, just shame her. And the difference between the scribes and the Pharisees and Jesus is that, they have really, in so many ways, shut down their own hearts regarding the situation, but also their very lives. What Jesus knows about the woman caught in adultery is that she genuinely thought this was going to make things better. She thought it was going to make her happy, or at the very least, it was going to, numb the pain of whatever situation she was in. And Jesus recognizes that our sin originates from a place of poverty and lack in our hearts, not from a place of fullness. We choose to sin against the love of God and love of neighbor, when we are lacking something in our hearts. If we were full of God's love, we wouldn't choose against him. So Jesus recognizes this, and entering into her heart, his mercy provides a situation where she can suffer his grace in that moment. Suffer his grace that saves her, in a sense, from these accusers. These people who want to condemn her. But that love and grace and mercy of Jesus doesn't just show up out of nowhere right there. God's grace and mercy, is from eternity. And if you go back to that first reading, remember first that those first readings all this season have been in some way referential to the Exodus event. And this one almost even more so, and poignantly for us, when we hear from the prophet Isaiah. He is hundreds of years after the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham and the Israelites when they take possession of the land. In fact, we dive in here in this moment where they no longer possess the land, having been unfaithful to the Lord, having turned away from him, having sought their happiness elsewhere from a place of poverty in their own hearts. They have been conquered and carried off to oppression by a foreign rule. And Isaiah says on God's behalf that, I know that you have been far from me, and I am going to, do this again, just in the same way as long ago for your ancestors, I saved them from the oppression of Pharaoh in Egypt, so I will save you too, and I will bring you back to the land. I will have mercy on you. I will give water to your thirsty soul here in the desert, and restore you to the promise. Restore the promise to you. So we see the pattern of the Lord entering into these places of poverty and lack in his people's lives, for the duration of the history of his relationship with his people. And so for us as well, as we turn to these last 2 weeks of this Lenten season, that we might recognize for ourselves as well. First of all, have a little compassion on yourself that, you sin from a place of lack and poverty, not from one of fullness and joy, right? But in that isn't an absence of responsibility, but a need to turn to the Lord and seek his mercy that leads you out of the desert of your own heart, that gives water to your thirsty soul, that restores you to the promise and the promise to you, that we might find a way, to the promised land of heaven, but also the promised land to our hearts, in the core of our very being, where Jesus dwells and provides the very life that we seek.